Your topic for this afternoon's live is how to differentiate yourself in a target market, in a crowded market. That was the phrase. If you're here live, then please post and say hello. Tell me where you are. If there's anything you particularly want to know about this topic, then do tell me. And tell me if you can hear me okay and everything. Hi, Mary. Good. So I got three things that I'm going to say, and I think the first one might take up most of the time. I'm going to try and make this a little bit briefer than some of my other things so that it's a bit easier to absorb when people are watching the recording. But I'm realizing more and more that if you're in a crowded market, you really need to show yourself and your personality. You need to actually show your what's different about you. And as I mentioned the other day in a post in the Facebook group, the Fuck Work Facebook group, what I see is when people start their entrepreneurial journey in particular, but even quite late on, what they do is they take, they're setting up their website or they're planning their social media, and they take everything that makes them different, special, their particular spin on things, their personality, and they strip it out of their marketing. And so they then end up with a website where you look at it, it looks exactly the same as everybody else's. It's using the same language, same kind of feel, and it gives you no clue whatsoever what that person's like. They completely bland themselves out. So why do people do this? And there's for a couple of reasons. One is school, and the other is jobs. And there's an awful lot of overlap between those two parts of society. School teaches you to kind of fit in and behave in a certain way. And there's a constructive part to socialization, to being able to get on with other people and gel and not actually be too much of a kind of fly in the ointment, as well. But there's also this kind of drive to conform, and there's only one evaluation of ability, which is, did you pass the test? But increasingly, it's just like, can you pass this exam? And it may have no correlation with the ability to be a good entrepreneur, for instance. And jobs are even more powerful at this. The corporate world, oh boy, it's I'm so glad I'm not in it. And I get a glimpse of it when I go into LinkedIn. I just go like, people still doing this? It's sort of, everyone's manufacturing an image. Everybody's kind of, there's a lot of virtual signaling going on right now on LinkedIn. It's like, if I post this, people think I'm a better person. And then just straight kind of self-aggrandizement. But all in a way that's not really heartfelt. And that's the way the corporate world teaches us to be. And when you become an entrepreneur, particularly if you're trying to create a personal brand around you, and if you want to kind of draw people to you because you have a particular take and a particular approach to the work you do, which many of us here do, particularly if what you're selling is basically your wisdom, your expertise, your skills, your talent, then that's really important. But it actually also applies, even if that's not the case. And the people we love now are people like, these are individual, right? Because for every person I can name that I love or that lots of people love, you might hate them. So try to put that aside and just understand that the best personal brands have a powerful attraction and rejection, kind of repellent feel to them. So Elon Musk, I'm in a full-on, bro crush with Elon Musk, and also another guy is a lot less well known, Naval Ravikant, who I just think just amazing and embodies so much of what I respect, of just really clever, science-based, entrepreneurial, funny, playful, irreverent. That's kind of everything that I value. in life. Now, other people might think Elon Musk is a complete jerk, and there's a good argument to make that case. But Elon clearly has a screw or two loose. He just renamed himself from CTO to Techno King. Officially in the stock market documents, in the what's it called, the body that manages SEC or whatever it is, and he renamed his CFO to Head of Coin, and he's just having fun, and that's a very appealing thing, and that's why he's got he's done some things which are not good, and he says some things I completely disagree with, and he's possibly partially insane. But you got to love a guy who shoots a roadster into space while playing Starman on the radio, or was it Space Oddity? I can't remember. And these are the people we fall in love with now. In fact, Jamie Cato told me that he came here once to be on my podcast, and he's the musician who was in Faithless, and he's a filmmaker, very interesting, creative guy, and he said. He said, the reason we fall in love with people is because of their quirks, because of their weirdnesses, because of their little strange habits. And those things are endearing to us. To the right person, they're endearing. To other people, that might be like, oh, no. You don't fall in love with a bland person who's faking it, who's sort of, got no rough edges. So... we want to see you. Jennifer says, I've just created a website which was followed by vulnerability hangover, which is, so this is a phrase from Brené Brown, vulnerability hangover, which is really good. I have these sometimes after Facebook Lives. Afterwards, I started looking at other people's and realized mine isn't the same. I actually started to worry if I'm not corporate enough. It feels vulnerable to actually be yourself and to show more of yourself than is socially approved of. And it feels like I'm doing the wrong thing here because no one else is doing it. But when you do it, people really, really respond. They really like it. And you think of the people you really connect with in life. And often it's not been a smooth journey for them. They'll often talk about, look at Oprah and her struggles with food and her weight and her background. I think she was abused, wasn't she? And that's partly why people feel such a strong connection with her. And it's often, it's even sometimes people who've done something but is socially disapproved of, and then they've kind of got themselves together and, they admit they did something wrong, but they really made good on it. And that's also, it can create a really strong bond with the people who follow you. So I'm mulling over a fourth book at the moment, and mulling over as in sort of writing in my sleep. I sort of, random moments when I'm either asleep or washing up, I kind of think of something I'm going to put in this book. And what I'm realizing is that, that there's kind of three, it might be ranged in a series of superpowers. I haven't decided, it might change. But there are three superpowers that I begin to recognize in marketing. And one is knowing yourself. So that's, know thyself is clearly, that's in the Bible, isn't it? That's obviously been around a couple of thousand years. Or was that actually from ancient Greece? I can't remember. Maybe somebody can tell me. And then the second superpower is to like yourself. And that's a whole different skill, but it's really important, because it's one thing to know yourself, but if you think you're despicable, that's quite difficult. And then the third superpower is to be willing to show yourself. And a lot of people are not visible enough. They're really, they put out one social media post every 2 weeks or something, or one email every month, and they wonder why their business isn't taking off. And you do need to be present. You need to be around. People need to see you. And so part of it is just visibility. But also but also how much can you be an authentic version of yourself? Now, part of this book is basically this idea for this fourth book. I've got a good title, but I'm not going to mention it because until I that's one thing I keep secret about books. But it's basically sorting the stuff out in your head that gets in the way of you being successful as a creative or as an entrepreneur. And I've written bits about this before, but this whole book would be about that. And in order to, part of it is what I've learned from psychotherapy as a client, but also in some of the trainings I've done around it, and realizing that sorting yourself out and then liking yourself enough to show yourself is a really powerful business strategy, actually, to put it bluntly. And if you are going to be more visible, you do need to like yourself, because if there are bits you kind of think are terrible about you, you won't hide them, or you'll kind of apologize for them, and people will pick up that you're holding back, or that you're I don't know, in some way not being genuine with us, or you're sort of, you being down on yourself translates to maybe you be down on the same part of them. And people can read this stuff very subtly. And if you, for instance, if you're full of bitterness and resentment, and you just go out to the world with that, and you're very honest about, well, if you just put that out there unfiltered and without any kind of knowing yourself very well and getting to the point where you like it and you can forgive yourself for it and can get a handle on it, then that won't be appealing. So you do need to actually have quite a lot in place to make it really work. But when you do it, it can work really well. And then you can end up with a brand where, yes, you'll turn off some people, but the people who, instead of, like, it's not enough for somebody to kind of find you vaguely interesting and like you. If you want to actually sell things, if you want to sell courses or expertise or something like that, in order for people to get over the trust barrier to really buy from you, to pay significant money, they're going to have to, generally it'd be the people who really like you and who can see your values and their values largely align with yours, and they want more of what you represent. So, Tanya here was saying, like, she just redid her website. She's got hot pink all over my brand. Gives me joy. Don't care, but it's not corporate. And it's great, right? And some people just go, oh God, what is this? But if it makes sense for you, I had a friend who put purple everywhere, and I didn't really like her website as a result, but it was part of her thing, and she always wore purple, and she was, she talked about how much she loved purple. It was part of who she was, and she had a very devoted following. There's a couple of questions here. Let's have a look. My dog whistle, superpowers. What was that then? So Margaret says, yes, need to do this. And David says, how much needs to be in place to start the ball rolling? Well, what I would suggest is you can do this step by step. I emailed the other day about this topic and saying, just show yourself step by step. And she said, well, that's all very well, but, that's difficult to do. And I go, yeah, but she was going like, to just show yourself. And I go, yeah, but you're missing the point. I'm saying, what I'm saying is it's a muscle you can build. So you can be just a bit more yourself, a bit more honest. This isn't about bearing all necessarily. It might not be relevant. It's not the sort of kind of, what secrets can I tell kind of thing. It's more like, how can I be myself with who I am and show my personality? Because that's what they're going to, particularly if they're hiring you, that's what they're going to get anyway. I remember a friend of mine saying he was nervous about being seen. And he said, well, people might realize I'm a bit posh, because he's got quite a posh accent. And I said, well, they're going to find out you're posh when they work with you anyway. So they might as well find out now. And if they've got a problem with that, let them select themselves out early on, rather than getting to work with you and for some reason not being able to get over the fact that you're posh. And exactly the same thing works. If you feel like, I don't know what, the opposite end of a spectrum, and you're a bit kind of rough around the edges, and you're not very slick, and I don't know what, you're not corporate at all, and as long as you're okay with it, it's fine. And people who go like, oh my gosh, your grammar is appalling, or something like that, or why do you swear, they will opt themselves out. Frank was asking for examples other than Elon Musk. I mean, think for yourself, Frank, who do you really love? Who do you kind of really feel an affinity with? Because that's what we're talking about here. And those are people who aren't always perfect. Maybe when people are younger, they're kind of drawn to people who pretend to be, have everything sorted out. But I think as you get older, you realize that everybody, and certainly I've learned from being in the self-help world, that everybody, even in the self-help world who appears to be a guru, everyone's mad, right? Everybody in some way or other is at least partially mad. And that is the normal human condition. Now there's still a mental health scale, and at the bottom end, people have severe problems which are very inhibit your life. And at the top end, you can be, more functional, but you'll still have some neuroses. This is what Freud called being a normal neurotic. But most of the time, we try to hide these things. And it's very endearing if you can dare to put that thing out and let it be seen. And people will, love you anyway, basically. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So, if you're funny, if you're sweary, you can kind of be that in your work. If you're incredibly geeky, if you're really just embarrassed just how obsessed you are with marketing or with some embodiment therapy, or I don't know what it is, and your friends think you're a bit weird because you think and talk about nothing else, you can be that, because for the person who's going to hire you for that service, that's appealing. Some people are I'm really into science. I studied physics at college, and I believe in the experiential learning. So I think experiential learning is really important. One of the ways you create a really original content to stand out is by making your life a laboratory, which is a phrase from the book, F-Word Let's Play. So there's a chapter that touches on this kind of stuff. Well, there's a whole book kind of is a little bit about that kind of stuff. And so make your life a laboratory, and you experiment and you find ideas and new ways of doing things because you've actually experienced it. That's really valuable. But because I'm into science, I also love real evidence-based. So if you're going to start giving advice to people about their health, I really like seeing the evidence that someone's actually researched it and proven it in a proper clinical setting. And that's not everybody's passion. I run a group called Humanity versus Corona, which I started a year ago when we went into lockdown. And I did that because I wanted to share the good news from science about the coronavirus, because I thought the press was showing too many kind of negative stories. And that's been, a lifesaver for a lot of us. It's helped me as well, having that group. You want to go and find Humanity versus Corona if you're not in it. And so you could be like, that was an expression of some aspect of my personality, which is I'm really into science, That's a group where we share graphs and get excited about graphs. And other people just go like, what? That kind of stuff that does not go viral on your personal profile. But in a group like that, everyone will get very excited about a graph, about case incidents or hospitalization rates or something like that. So we all have these quirks, and we'd be a lot better off sometimes if we just, if you flaunt your quirks. instead of hiding them and apologizing for being geeky or sciencey or being angry, sometimes it's appropriate to be angry. I've got a client in the Pioneer program, and she's already got a really successful business. And she's creating a kind of brand around hand-embroidered products with a political message, with a left-wing political message. And she's getting great results just having a buy button that says, I'll clean this up, but F the Tories. So her buy button says F the Tories, not buy. And it works really well. And so she's coming out very much with her own political stance. It doesn't matter if you share that or not, particularly, but for the purposes of the example, it's that she's showing exactly how strongly she feels about our current government in the UK. And there are other people who feel equally strongly, who want to be part of that same message and live and breathe that. And she's helping them to do it. So I think in this day and age, what's different about you could well be your greatest asset. So rather than hiding what's different about you, and sometimes this is about, I reference sometimes you might have a neurodiversity thing like ADHD. I've got clients who currently who are ADHD, who are on the autism spectrum. I've had clients who are blind, who are, mobility impairment, who are deaf. And all these things can give you a different experience of life. I've got my own endocrine condition I've lived with my whole life. It's given me a different perspective from anybody else who doesn't have that. And you can use that and the trauma I experienced as a result of it, you can incorporate into your work if you can process it and make sense of it. And you may have a unique perspective. Similarly, if you're in a minority, the LGBT, if you're in a minority ethnicity or something like that, you have an experience that I can't comprehend completely. I'm interested and I want to, but I can never really know. And if you learn something about how to survive, about how to be accepted, about how to, conquer against the odds, that stuff you can bring into what you help other people with, or part of your brand possibly, and so on. So think about what is different about you and how you can actually make it part of your brand. I quote Ray Charles in F Work Let's Play. And he said, and I think it was in a BBC interview, and I haven't been able to find it written somewhere, so it's from memory from when I wrote it down. But he said his mum gave him 2 pieces of advice, and he said that they really stuck with him. Always be yourself, and not everyone is going to like you. And I thought that was just, that combination of the two is superb. And Ray Charles, he did his own kind of shocking things and had his own flaws, and he was addicted to heroin for quite a while, wasn't he? But such a pioneer of music, unbelievable how he, revolutionized. I can't remember, he sort of didn't he take like gospel into rock and roll sort of, and then he went country, and people went like, what? As a black guy doing country, the people who loved him for what he was doing already hated him for doing country. The people in country hated him who were racist. And it's like, he just didn't care. And that's how you get to be a pioneer over and over again. You've got to somehow, you can build the muscle, I guess is the lesson I'm saying, of being willing to have some people dislike you. The example I give is I did a 5-day challenge, a free, this is worth talking about actually, I'll mention this at the end, the 5-day standout challenge, because it's all about this. I did a 5-day standout challenge, and after it, a woman sent me an email and told me just, how terrible my presenting style was, and how I was, how I kind of touched my face too much and adjusted my chair and drank water while I was live and all this kind of stuff. Because in the 5-day challenge, I go live for an hour every evening. And just a kind of diatribe of just awfulness. I think at one point she said, I think you're quite good, but. So, there was some sort of compliment or something. And a moment, when you read things like that, it can be quite a knock. I mean, even, and people always send them on the fucking weekend, always the weekend. So I got it on a Saturday when I was blowing up my kayak with some friends, and I went, oh my God. And then my friend, who's a bit blunt, very helpfully said, yeah, you do touch your head a lot, John. It's like, yeah, thanks. Could you just say something nice right now? Because I've just been abused verbally by somebody. But I got over that pretty quickly, because the point is, I'm not for her. So other people who are in that 5-day challenge saw that I'm quite informal. Like, I'm not, my only notes on this are that, and I'm just talking off the top of my head. And I'm not super slick, and I'm not trying to be. I'm not Tony Robbins, who hits everything, note perfect every time, because he's done it 1,000 times, and is very high energy and speaks very quickly. And so if you like Tony, you probably won't like me, and vice versa. And there'll be some overlap. Tony Robbins I'm talking about. But I think I'm more genuine. I don't buy the Tony story of like he doesn't have a problem in the world and everything is, he's got everything worked out. I think he's becoming a more rounded person as he gets older. He's got a bit more of a sense of humor. But and he's a very impressive guy, so I'm not down on him at all. But I don't buy this slickness that people put out there, because I've seen behind the curtain of so many people in self-help and self-improvement, because a lot of my, peer group is in that world. And I know that every single one of those people has their struggles, just like every other human being. So that's the kind of message I want to say. So if this topic interests you, there are 2 other things I could say, but I think it's going to take too long. So I might leave those for another time. So this one is really about being yourself and showing yourself, and how much of a superpower that is. So put yourself and your personality and your quirks and what's different about you back into your marketing. Spencer says, seems challenging to not be persuaded to change by that kind of critical feedback that I got from that woman about my presenting style. When somebody gives you some feedback, it's worth looking through it and go like, is there something I should do about this? And is there something here for me that I can use? And some people would just say, chuck it out. I shared it with Helen Pritchard, who's quite well known for LinkedIn, her LinkedIn mastermind. And she went, no, I think she said, fuck them. I can't remember what she said, but she said, no, absolutely not. Do not worry about that at all. Now, I always want to kind of clock it and go, is there something useful for me? But I can tell, because I've been in this game a while, and I've done, I've done a lot of work on myself, that I can, and I've done psychotherapy training. I can tell when somebody's triggered. So something about me being unprofessional and uncorporate and not slick pressed her button, because like, how dare you not be incredibly slick? But actually, that might be the biggest lesson she needs. And often, so an example, like a friend of mine who used to run a similar business to me a long time ago, she was very good at this. She got an email once from somebody when she sent out her newsletter, kind of really criticizing her for putting some typos in her email newsletter. So like, how could you do that? How could you send it out? Do you not even check this? And my friend replied and said, oh, how interesting, you had such a strong reaction. Can I ask you something? Do you ever hold back from putting things out into the world for fear of criticism, that what you put out won't be perfect? And she replies and goes, oh my God, how did you know? It's like, well, the reason we know is because you're doing it to us. So you're almost certainly doing it to you. And so when you get that kind of really strong reaction, like it's like a baby spitting out food, you know, it's not really very useful research. It's basically useful data. It's like a baby going "Ugh," and spitting it out. And that's about how sophisticated it is. And then I know at that point, it's really about what's triggered in her and probably isn't that useful for me. Frank says, could she have intended it as constructive criticism? No, it's okay for people to give me constructive criticism. It's heavy-handed and a bit clumsy, and I'm okay with that. It was not in that category, Frank. It was just like a long list of just everything I was doing wrong. And that's how you can tell that there's, like, if you really want to give constructive criticism, you should be able to pull apart the positive and negative, and she wasn't doing that. Anyway, so I just want to encourage you to kind of take the baby steps towards putting your personality back into your brand, into your marketing, into your social media. You don't need to bear all and talk about the most painful thing in your life or your worst flaw, but you can start to say, like, you know, for instance, I will talk about the fact that I'm terrible at financial management, right? I'm good at making money. To become really rich, you need to be good at making money, good at managing money, good at growing money. I'm only good at the first one. So I don't teach people about the other two. I get other people, if I'm ever going to share advice, I'll share other people's advice on that. And I'm working on it. So, but I can talk about that and go like, well, you know, I forget to pay my taxes sometimes and that kind of stuff. Doesn't mean that I'm not any good at marketing or, you know, driving sales and all the things that I teach people. I'm also bad at time management. I don't have a lot of energy. I don't have a fantastic diet. You know, I can talk about these things because I know there's so much of me that I use in my work that is actually, you know, I'm really good at it. And so I don't give diet advice because it's not an area of strength for me. And I think that's what we can all do. And if you can share a little bit of like, oh, well, I'm just rubbish at that. And kind of, people really like the fact that, oh my God, you've got this massive, you know, lack or flaw, and you don't hate yourself for it. It's a really appealing thing. So that's the main thing. The other two things I was going to talk about, which I won't go into, is super niching. It really helps if you're very specific what you do for people or who you do it for. And we cover that in my 5-day standout challenge. It's also in the book, the F Word Let's Play book. And the other thing is to identify your core message or meme in your work that shows that you've got a different take on things. And maybe I'll do a live just about that. So it's quite difficult to explain, but basically you can sometimes think, well, like I've got a client who's a clutter consultant, and there are lots of clutter consultants, but she is like one of the leading ones in the UK, and has a book out. She's got another book coming out soon. And but the fact is, her approach is completely different from Marie Kondo and other people who are well known. And working out what that approach is and summing it up in a book title is what I love to help people with. That's what I do. That's my favorite kind of work. And sort of how do we differentiate you from everybody else? So that's the concept of finding a way of like, what is your approach that stands out from everybody else's? That was the third thing I was going to talk about, but let's not go on for an hour today because I think this makes it a bit more easy for people to consume if we keep it brief. So let me know if you've taken away something, if that's inspired you to do something. Maybe type in the comments now and tell me, or if you're watching it afterwards, tell me what you've taken away from this. There's lots more we could talk about on this kind of area because I'm vaguely working through the structure of the book in what we're doing, in sort of stuff I'm sharing in this Facebook group and so on. But one thing I will finish with is to talk about the 5-day startup challenge. The 5-day standout challenge. It's running in a month's time. in April. You can join now. It's completely free of charge. Some people here will have done it, but you can always do it again. I might change it this time. But anyway, this is the plan currently, is we're going to run it in a month on the 26th of April. I think that's the date. And you can join by going to theideaslab.org. Can I actually write that in the comments? Maybe somebody could type it. The full link is theideaslab.org/5DC. 5DC for 5-day challenge. And that will take you straight to the opt-in page, or just go to theideaslab.org and scroll down a bit, and you'll see a link for the 5-day challenge, which will take you to the page to join. And what we do in there is we work on what is your super niche. How can we make you stand out by being really specific what you do and who you do it for? How do we make sure that you can create one thing that sells really well, that makes a good chunk of change? Thank you, Frank, for putting the link in. That's great. And make you a good chunk of change that we know people are going to sell. How do we then get people, at the moment, this is the content, I might actually change it slightly, but at the moment, it's then how do we do something for free that gets people into a conversation with you, that turns into sales, and then how do we get other people to send you a whole load of clients or customers in one go. It's all free. There's a little lesson every morning. It's about 10 to 15 minutes. I guarantee you can keep up with it. You can then come to the lives in the evening. You don't have to come to every one, but there's an hour of me just answering questions. So I'm not teaching anything like I am here. Basically, I just go through questions one by one, and I answer every single damn one. No matter how long that takes. So everybody gets their question answered in order of when they posted it. And it's also great fun. We have sometimes up to 1,000 people, sometimes just a few hundred, we'll see. As I say, the link is in the chat, thanks to Jennifer and Frank. So join us on that if you want to get in on the challenge. And thank you very much for joining me on this. Go and flaunt your quirks. All right.